Hi. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how you might improvise in a classical style on piano. I don't see a lot of people talking about this. It's more about how to improvise, jazz on piano or pop on piano, and I think that those are super oversimplified, not because those two genres are simple necessarily, but just because that's really marketable. And I don't care about marketability, I care about things sounding good when they're supposed to sound good, and funky when they're supposed to sound funky. So, just as an example as to what I mean by improvising in a classical style, I really mean improvising in a romantic style. Uh, we could have something like, I don't know, just to prove that I'm improvising, I'm just going to press, 5 random notes to, you know, have a motif. Okay, that's what we're going to work with. So this is what I mean by improvising in the classical style. Yeah. That might be the beginning of something that I, would improvise, and then I would do that for a little bit. So let's see how I do something like that, and then how, if you give that more time to develop, it can turn into something even cooler. So, firstly, most of the time I'm not actually going to be just jabbing my fingers randomly in order to find a motif that I want to work with. Sometimes I won't even have a motif. I'll just uh, go into playing chords that aren't supposed to work well with each other, but work well when you put certain rhythms on them. But most of the time, either I'll do that, or I'll just even start with a melody or a sort of similar melody that I learned from some other pieces that I've actually taken the time to sight read and memorize. So if we want an example of that, the Scriabin piece, Vers la Flamme, it's kind of nearing on obscurity. Has this minor second motif that it starts with, and that it, keeps on going throughout the piece. Not gonna play the entire thing because I don't remember it anymore. But that's the deal. So I might, start with that, but in a slightly lower register, if I wanted kind of a more mysterious feel. So I could do, I don't know. That's an example of something that you could, feasibly do if you wanted a certain piece in a certain style. So another thing that is super great is utilizing different rhythms in your accompaniment, which, I mean, the left hand if you are maybe just getting started, but both hands if you kind of want to start putting the melody in the lower register. So by the different rhythms, let's talk about that. In the romantic style, you're especially, with Chopin, like, the Chopin nocturnes and Liszt as well, although, it's a little bit, it can be a little bit difficult to get all the leaps properly, but, with Liszt improvisation, but it is improv. So with Chopin especially, you're going to find kind of these almost hand patterns that you can loop. And, super famous example, which I'm sure you've all heard if you're into piano at all, would be the Chopin Nocturne Opus 27 posthumous. I'm thinking of the posthumous C-sharp minor nocturne, but I guess Opus 27 number 2 also works. And it's, with the D flat major, it's this. Like that, right? Now, notice that there is this left-hand pattern going on here. And Chopin keeps this going on for quite a while, but when we want to improvise, you can always do something different with. And then, we can kind of start having a little bit of a melody even up there in that alto register if you wanted to. And that kind of ability to memorize or to improvise with the left hand is invaluable to me, because it just enables my improv to have so much more texture than if I left it to, or I wouldn't even, if I was super inexperienced, I wouldn't even put that bass note. I would just be. I would never, I might do that, but the point is that I would never do just that. I would always mix it up. I would maybe put some counter melody in there, so this video is turning into one huge mess. I would put some counter melody in there, so something like. Just so that way your listener, if someone ever does listen to your improv, won't get bored with just the melody or just the left hand if you're doing some sort of an intro. Another essential part of improvising in a way that isn't just, incredibly boring is changing your register often when you're kind of searching around for a tone that you want. So the reason why I kind of have some hesitancy to this is because with, let's get a, Vers la Flamme. Vers la Flamme stays in the low register for half of the piece before it starts going insane with the huge, I won't bore you. Before it goes insane, but that's because it has a very specific tone that it's looking for, and it has this very specific imagery of flame. Do research in piece, and you'll find what I mean. But when you're improvising, you're not always going to know what you're doing within the first few minutes. You might kind of have to rely on your autopilot senses in order to not bore the heck out of yourself, or just discourage the heck out of yourself. So you might have to go into multiple registers in order to find what you're looking for, because different parts of the piano have different timbres. Example, let's say we're doing something. Let's say we're doing something like this. I don't know. Of course, I just had to choose to become the world's crappiest player all of a sudden, but the point there is given, and I'm sorry that the lights went off randomly. Yeah, but the point there is given that if I kind of allowed myself to stay in that one register for the whole time, I would probably get bored of it, especially since the particular idea that my brain happened to come up with that moment was more chromatic, and it would kind of muddy up in those lower registers. Maybe it was better to stay in this alto register rather than go so high to the soprano, but that's fine. It's improv, so mistakes are allowed until you deem that they're not. Yeah, and well, that's about as much as I can pull out of my head at this moment.